They decided who I was in about 3 seconds. Not because of anything I said, not because of anything I did, but because of how I looked standing there with a boarding pass in my hand. 3 seconds was all it took for a stranger to look at me and quietly decide I didn't belong. And from that moment on, everything that happened felt less like an accident and more like a slow, deliberate push. I was 18, flying alone for the first time, headed overseas on a trip that was supposed to feel like freedom. I remember thinking how strange it was that my hands were shaking, not from fear, but from excitement. New country, new start. A break from the small-town assumptions I'd been carrying on my back my whole life. I dressed the way I always did. Hoodie sneakers, backpack slung over one shoulder. Comfortable. Normal. Nothing about me felt unusual to me. But I learned that day how dangerous normal can look when it's filtered through someone else's bias. At the gate, the line moved fast. Business travelers tapping phones, couples arguing quietly, parents negotiating with tired kids. I stepped forward when my group was called, handed my ticket to the gate agent, and watched her smile fade the second she looked up at me. It wasn't dramatic, just subtle enough to make you question yourself. Her eyes dropped to my clothes, then back to my face, then to the screen. She scanned my pass. Green light. Instead of handing it back, she held it a little tighter. "Step aside for a moment," she said. "That's how it always starts. A moment. A small request. Something that sounds reasonable until you're the only one being asked." I glanced around expecting someone else to be pulled with me. No one was. The man behind me walked past without slowing down. The line kept moving like I wasn't even there. She asked me where I was going. I told her. Asked why I was traveling alone. I answered. Asked what was in my bag. I opened it. Laptop, notebook, headphones, nothing interesting, nothing illegal. She flipped through my notebook anyway, pausing at pages filled with sketches and notes. Her face tightened like she'd found something she'd been waiting for. "What's this?" she asked. I told her I liked designing things. Planes, machine systems. I said it with a half smile, trying to sound light like it wasn't a big deal. She didn't smile back. She waved over a uniformed security officer and said the words that still echo in my head. "I'm concerned. Concern is powerful. It doesn't need proof. It doesn't need logic. It just needs permission." Suddenly, I was answering questions louder than I wanted to, feeling every eye in the gate drift toward me. I could hear whispers, feel the shift in the air. No one said anything outright, but everyone understood what was happening. I was being evaluated. They didn't find anything. Of course they didn't. But there was no apology, no acknowledgement of how wrong it all felt. Just a quiet, "You can board now." That landed like a dismissal. As I walked down the jet bridge, excitement drained out of me, replaced by that familiar tightness in my chest. The feeling that no matter how calm you stay, no matter how polite you are, you're already guilty in someone's mind. On the plane, it didn't stop. The flight attendant greeted everyone else with warmth, jokes, small talk. When she got to me, her voice changed. Still polite, technically, but colder, sharper, like every word was being measured. When I reached for my phone to take a photo out the window, she appeared instantly telling me to put it away, even though the guy across the aisle was still scrolling. When I stood up to use the restroom, she blocked the aisle. "Where are you going?" she asked. "The bathroom," I said, gesturing behind her. She shook her head. "Not right now." It wasn't about the bathroom. It was about control. About reminding me that I was being watched. I sat back down, jaw tight, hands clenched in my lap, telling myself to just get through the flight. Don't react. Don't give them anything. You learn early that your reaction will always be judged harder than their actions. About an hour later, the plane changed course. At first, I thought it was turbulence. Then I looked at the screen and realized we were descending, not climbing. The captain came on voice. Steady said something about a precaution, a minor issue, an unscheduled stop. My stomach dropped. I knew. I didn't need anyone to say it. I was the issue. When we landed, the plane didn't pull up to a gate. It stopped somewhere quiet, far from the terminal. The cabin went silent in that way that means everyone is paying attention. Then the door opened and officers came on board. They didn't look confused. They didn't look curious. They looked like they already knew exactly who they were there for. One of them pointed at me, just like that. I stood up slowly, heart pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. I could feel eyes on me from every direction. Some people looked uncomfortable. Some looked relieved. One man shook his head like I'd inconvenienced him personally. I walked off that plane feeling smaller with every step, like something essential was being stripped away in public. The room they took me to was cold and plain, the kind of place designed to make you feel temporary and powerless. They asked questions for hours. Same questions, different wording. Each answer felt like it sank into the floor without making a sound. At some point, fear turned into numbness. I stopped trying to predict what they wanted to hear and just told the truth. Eventually, one of them told me I could make a call. I called my father. It was late. I expected confusion, maybe worry. What I heard instead was silence, heavy and dangerous. When I told him where I was, what had happened, his voice changed. Not loud, not angry, controlled, focused. The kind of voice that means something is about to break. He was on a plane within the hour. Everything moved fast after that. The tone in the room shifted. Officers started standing straighter, speaking differently. The same facts I'd been saying all night suddenly mattered when they came from him. By the time he arrived, the story had already started unraveling. Seeing him walk in was the first time I felt like I could breathe again. He didn't ask questions right away. He just hugged me firm and steady like he was anchoring me to something solid. Then he turned and walked back out, and I knew the real confrontation was about to start. I wasn't there when he faced the crew, but I heard about it later. About the apologies that came too late. About the justifications that sounded thin even to the people saying them. About the realization spreading slowly across their faces that what they thought was routine was actually something much uglier. The video leaked anyway. A short clip, shaky and grainy but clear enough. Me being escorted off a plane. It spread faster than anyone could control. People argued online like they always do. Some said it was necessary. Some said it was obvious profiling. The airline scrambled. Statements were released. Employees were suspended. But sitting in a quiet room afterward, none of that noise mattered to me. What mattered was the question I couldn't shake. How many times had this happened to someone without a phone call that could change the ending? How many people had walked off planes, out of buildings, out of opportunities, carrying the same quiet shame I felt that night? When my father talked about consequences, about firings and policies, I asked him if it would really change anything. If the next person wouldn't do the same thing, feel the same fear, make the same assumptions. He listened, really listened, and for the first time I saw uncertainty in him too. That's where the real shift happened. Not in a boardroom or a press release, but in a quiet conversation where neither of us pretended there was an easy fix. He decided then that this wasn't going to be handled quietly. That discomfort was part of the solution. Changes were made, big ones. Training that couldn't be skipped. Oversight that didn't answer to convenience. Systems designed to catch the quiet moments where bias hides behind professionalism. My name got attached to it whether I wanted it to or not. At first, that scared me. I didn't want to be a symbol. I just wanted to move forward. But I started to understand something. Stories don't change the past, but they can pressure the future. Silence protects the system. Speaking forces it to look at itself. I still think about that flight sometimes. About how close I came to shrinking myself just to survive the moment. About how easy it would have been to walk away quietly and let it happen again to someone else. And I wonder how many people are walking into situations right now unaware of how quickly they can be labeled managed, removed. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If you had been on that plane watching it unfold, what would you have done? Would you have spoken up even if it made things uncomfortable? Or would you have stayed quiet, grateful it wasn't you? There's no easy answer, but pretending it doesn't matter is one we can't afford. Tell me what you think. Argue with me if you want. Share your own story in the comments. Because these moments don't change unless we keep talking about them.